Evening. The Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a board work session on Thursday, May 5th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center located at 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, May 9th, 2022 regular board meeting agenda designated as action items, and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. Audience members may not participate in the meeting outside the designated agenda items for citizen participation or public comment. Disruption of the meeting by any person, including the audience, is inappropriate and will be addressed by the board president or the board's counsel as a meeting parliamentarian. Continued or repeated disruption of any board meeting by words or action may result in removal or loss of the privilege to attend the meeting. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on Comcast Channel 16 and the district website. They will also be available as video on demand on the district website following tonight's meeting. For the video to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. I'm turning mine off now. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize our Community Leadership Committee members who are in attendance this evening. We have Nancy Frankel, and we also have Ryan Irving. Thank you for your attendance. The invocation, Pledge of Allegiance, vision and mission statement, recognitions, board comments, and citizen participation portions of the agenda will be presented at the regular board meeting on Monday, May 9th, 2022. We will now proceed with public comments. Off script, I always like to think of these as being public agenda comments, but for now we call them public comments. Patrons who have duly registered per Policy BED Local may address the board and make public comments on an agenda item during or before the board's consideration of the item. The board may allow public comment on agenda items at all meetings. The board will continue with the remaining agenda after the registered patrons have had an opportunity to speak. Patrons who have registered to speak this evening may see the order of their names listed on the screens to your right and to your left. Before your name is called, please move forward and sit in one of the two reserved seats on the front row. Our first speaker is Alexei Swirsky.
This is a formal complaint, and I'm addressing agenda item 9C on instructional materials allotment. My complaint is that there are no specifics whatsoever about what curriculum is being bought. In Miller versus California, the Supreme Court ruled that obscene material is not protected speech. I'm concerned that some of the instructional materials may violate harmful to minors laws or House Bill 3979, Texas House Bill 3979 by Representative Steve Toth, which otherwise is known as the Critical Race Theory Bill. Children are to be educated, protected, and cherished. Federal and state laws prohibit exposing children to obscene material. You can call me a book banner all you want, but those who are doing that are just trying to rephrase the argument to take the spotlight off of anyone in the school district who is harming children by exposing them to pornographic material. Whether these criminals are school board members, school administrators, or teachers, it is an abomination, and they run the risk of being arrested and prosecuted. Harmful to minors laws seek to protect minors, generally considered those 17 and younger, for pornography, obscenity, and other material that may bring harm to them. Nearly every state has some form of harmful to minors laws. Many of these laws limit distribution of sexually explicit material to minors. The majority of these laws have survived constitutional challenges. Any violation of federal child pornography laws is a serious crime, and convicted offenders face serious statutory penalties. For example, a first-time offender convicted of producing child pornography under 18 U.S.C. 2251 faces fines and a statutory minimum of 15 years to 30 years maximum in prison. In addition to facing imprisonment and fines, convicted offenders of federal obscenity laws involving minors may also be required to register as sex offenders and therefore ineligible for employment in school districts. I'm asking that more details and information on exactly what curriculum this allotment is for be provided to the public. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carolyn Rospierski.
Good evening, and a big thank you to our teachers every day, but especially during Teacher Appreciation Week. My name is Carolyn Rospierski, and I'm speaking on Agenda Item 7A, Budget. This week, CFISD teachers received their contracts for the 22-23 school year with a deadline to sign by May 13th. They have not been informed of their salaries. As an HR manager, a contract without a salary baffles me. But besides that, other school districts have announced raises, retention stipends, and signing bonuses. Amidst a worsening teacher shortage, can we afford to wait to tell our teachers their salaries for next year? Our teachers have served our students through two of the hardest years in living memory. Please give all teachers a 5% raise without lowering their amount for experienced teachers with the midpoint caveat. Any delay may cost us some of our best employees and potential new hires. Please communicate before the May 13th contract signing deadline. Teachers must complete a yearly average of 25 hours of professional development on their own time to earn the highest ratings of their evaluations and are not typically compensated. While the 25 hours are not required, this policy privileges people with time and resources. It is not equitable. Years ago, CFISD teachers were compensated for their development time. Let's bring that compensation back. Another budget-related item, shortages of paraprofessionals and substitute teachers. Paras are skilled workers who meet the needs of our most valuable students, yet we do not pay them a living wage. Substitute teachers are needed more than ever, yet we do not pay them competitively with surrounding districts. When we don't have enough subs, which is often, teachers feel guilty about taking time off and forcing colleagues to cover their classes. This contributes to burnout. Please increase wages for subs. Our resource-rich state does not adequately fund education, and this needs to be addressed at the ballot box. Therefore, not only do I urge our school district to do everything we can to improve compensation, I urge every voting age citizen in Cypress to vote for pro-public school candidates in the November midterm election. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christina Woods.
Hello, my name is Christina, and I'm speaking on 9A, nominations for TASB Board of Directors. Such a position is one of influence. It is crucial, therefore, that trustees think carefully in nominating. One important consideration is competence. We would be better served by one of our more veteran trustees who have leaps and bounds more knowledge and experience in running a large school district than do our new trustees. As is the case for any novice, your freshman year is the time to listen, learn, and seek to increase your understanding of your new role. Another important consideration is integrity. TASB has a code of ethics, which is about more than just following the law. It's about setting a higher standard to ensure that decisions and actions reflect the interests of the district as a whole. In your brief service as trustees, Ms. Blasingame, Mr. Henry, and Mr. Scanlon, you have repeatedly engaged in actions at odds with the code of ethics. To name a few, appointing your spouses, friends, and financial supporters, some of whom have no children in the district and don't in fact even live here, to a district committee, making racist comments about black teachers and students, stating explicitly that you don't like opportunity for all, attempting to interfere with activities delegated to the superintendent, and calling out special needs student who you referred to as a repeat offender. While campaigning, Mr. Henry discussed his intention on video to do a lot of damage, while Dr. Blasingame and Mr. Scanlon expressed agreement with this. In the same video, Mr. Henry promises to get rid of TASB, as Mr. Scanlon nods enthusiastically and Ms. Blasingame grins and exclaims, "Wow, wow." It is abundantly clear that our new trustees would not engage in good faith actions were they to be nominated to TASB. So as you're considering nominations, I urge you to remember the importance of the competence of the TASB Code of Ethics, our new trustees' unethical bad faith track record in the best interests of CFISD, and truly providing opportunity for all. Thank you.
We will now proceed with Agenda Item 7B under the reports portion of the agenda. Agenda Item 7A under reports will be presented at the regular board meeting on Monday, May 9th, 2022. Report 7B. The district will provide an update on the early childhood literacy and mathematics proficiency plans and the college, career, and military readiness plans. Presenters are Dr. Linda Macias and Dr. Ashley Claiborne. Dr. Claiborne.
Good evening, President Jackson, board members, Dr. Hendry. This evening, we will provide a report on the early childhood and college, career, military readiness, also known as CCMR, proficiency plans. House Bill 3, passed by the 86th Texas Legislature in 2019, requires school boards to adopt detailed plans developed by their district teams that achieve goals in two key areas: early childhood literacy and math, and then also CCMR. You may have heard us share several times now that our goal has been, and what we've discussed with campuses, is that we want to get back to, we keep saying whole. We want to get back to where we were in 2019. That's the year that our students performed academically, very well academically, and our district earned a 93. And so the goals that we have set is to get back to that whole, and then to continue moving forward from there. So you'll hear Dr. Claiborne, as she continues with the presentation a little bit, talk about that and talk about the performance of our kids pre-COVID. And you'll hear her talk about the targets that we set were based on pre-COVID, but we don't want to lower those. We want to continue moving forward from those targets. So Dr. Claiborne, I'm going to turn it over to you to continue with the presentation.
Texas Education Code 11.185, related to early childhood literacy and mathematics proficiency plans, requires that the plans must be set for each elementary in the district, use third grade STAR data. Cyfair selected to use the MEETS grade level standard or higher because the board has challenged us to increase the percent of students reaching the MEETS standard, and this is the level where we want our students to be performing. Targets should be set by student group. Any group with 25 or more students will have a target. The goals should be set for 5 years. The district should submit an annual report to the board on the district's progress toward the goals. The plan should be posted on the campus and district websites, and targeted professional development will be provided for classroom teachers in kindergarten, first, second, and third grades who are assigned to campuses that have not met the plan goals. Texas Education Code 11.186, related to college, career, or military readiness plans, requires that these plans must be set for each high school campus, evaluate college, career, or military readiness indicators used in the state and federal accountability systems, should be set by student group. Any group with 25 or more students will have a target. Again, the goals should be set for 5 years. The district should submit an annual report to the board regarding progress toward the goals, and the plan should be posted on campus and district websites. To access the campus-level plans on the district website, the board and viewing audience may follow this path. To access the campus-level plans on the campus websites, the board and viewing audience may follow this path. To develop the initial plans, we collaborated with the Texas Education Agency, Region 4, surrounding school districts, our internal curriculum team, and elementary and high school principals. Our focus when setting the initial target was the concept of returning to whole. Campuses were and still are working to achieve the same or better STAR performance than they had in 2018-19. When, as Dr. Macia said, we were an unofficially A district. Now let's review the early childhood literacy data tables as approved by the Board of Trustees in January of 2021. As the board and the viewing audience may recall, students may score at one of 4 levels on STAR: did not meet, approaches, meets, and masters. While most students in Cy-Fair score at the approaches or higher level on STAR, these goals and targets were set at the meets grade level or higher standard for 3rd grade students taking STAR reading. Since we're focusing on these higher performance levels, the targets are not yet in the 80s or 90s. As previously noted, the 2021 targets were set to match the campus level performance from 2018-19. Thus returning to whole. The 2 following years, we intended to work toward 2 points of growth, followed by 3 points of growth in the 2024 and 25 school years. The mathematics targets were structured in the same way. These tables set meets grade level or higher targets for 3rd grade students taking STAR mathematics. Once again, by focusing on these higher performance levels, the targets are not yet in the 80s or 90s. The 2021 targets were set to match the campus level performance, again from the 2018-19 school year. The 2 following years, we intended to work toward 2 points of growth, followed by 3 points of growth in 2024 and 25. Regarding college, career, and military readiness, also known as CCMR, let me begin by drawing your attention to the portion of the table outlined in yellow. These columns are annual graduates along with the reporting year. In the first row of the table, outlined in red, you will see that the data for the annual graduates from the 2020-21 school year were reported during the 2021-22 school year. The targets for the class of 2021 were set to match the campus level performance from the class of 2018-19, returning to whole. The 4 following years, we intended to work toward 2 points of growth. As we move to the portion of the presentation where we will share the 2021 results with the board, we would like to first remind the board and the viewing audience of the timeline leading up to these results. In March of 2020, traditional in-person instruction moved to learning at home. May of 2020 saw the STAR and EOCs canceled by the state. In September of 2020, the district was fully open and we provided both face-to-face learning and CFISD Connect for virtual learners. In January 2021, the early childhood and CCMR proficiency plans were approved by the Board of Trustees. STAR and EOC assessments returned in April and May of 2021. Participation rates were at an all-time low due to the state not providing a virtual option for either the STAR or EOC exams. This past August, Cy-Fair was once again fully open and temporary virtual learning was offered for kindergarten through 6th grade students in the fall semester. In November 2021, the administration provided the board with the Opportunity Gap presentation in which STAR data for Cy-Fair were compared with the state and beginning of year benchmark data were also reviewed. This February, the administration provided the board with data on the mid-year reading levels and growth as compared to beginning of the year reading levels. As the board and the viewing audience know, learning gaps have been created due to COVID-19. As previously mentioned, the Opportunity Gap presentation on November 8th, 2021, and the Texas Academic Performance Report public hearing on January 13th, 2022, identified as much. Therefore, it will not be surprising to see that the campuses were not able to meet all their 2021 early childhood and CCMR proficiency plan targets. Before you now is a table displaying the third grade reading target data at the meets or higher proficiency level for the 2020-21 school year. Beginning at the far left-hand side, you will see the major student groups, how many individual targets were set for each group, how many targets were actually evaluated for each group, because the number could change if a student group no longer had 25 or more students. The number and percent of targets that were met or exceeded across all campuses, and the number and percent of targets that were missed across all campuses. Before you now is a table displaying the third grade math data table at the meets or higher proficiency level for the 2020-21 school year. Again, at the far left-hand side, you will see the major student groups, how many individual targets were set for each group, how many targets were evaluated, the number and percent of targets that were met or exceeded across all campuses, and the number and percent of targets that were missed across all campuses. Finally, we have the data table displaying the college, career, and military readiness data for the class of 2020-21. Please note, these data do not include targets for Bridgeland High School or Cypress Park High School because they did not have a graduating class in 18-19 for us to use to set the initial targets. This table is formatted exactly like the previous two, so please take a moment to review these data. Dr. Macias will now provide you with information on how we're supporting teachers in closing the achievement gaps created by COVID-19. Yes, sir.
1 second.
I'm sorry.
Said that, make sure your mic is working.
Oh. Should I start over on this one?
Yes.
So,
Start over on that.
Okay. It sounds like it's working to me, but let me read this one again. Finally, we have the data table displaying the college, career, and military readiness data for the class of 2020-21. Please note these data do not include targets for Bridgeland High School or Cypress Park High School because they did not have a graduating class in 18-19 for us to use to set the initial targets. This table is formatted exactly like the previous two. Now, Dr. Macias will provide you information on how we are supporting teachers in closing the achievement gaps created by COVID-19 and our suggestions for moving forward.
so as you heard Dr. Claiborne share a little at the beginning, part of the requirement is that we do provide targeted professional development. And so this wasn't anything new for us because we provide a lot of professional development for our teachers in this district. But this is just a little bit of what we are providing. We have a digital learning conference, which I've talked about. We have new teacher literacy academies that's focused on making sure that we are addressing the gaps that have been created by the pandemic. August professional development, we provide 2 weeks actual professional development for teachers before the first day of school. 1 week is very much targeted to the instruction and to the curriculum that will be provided by the district. We have a day where all of our teachers go through the Berry Center. We call it the Rigor, Relevance, and Relationships Day for our teachers. And so they are hearing consultants, and they're also having time to plan for the upcoming year. And then the second week is actually at the campus, and it is specifically targeted to additional instruction that the campuses have in place. We also have just-in-time professional development. So throughout the year, we're providing professional development for our teachers. And just-in-time means before the unit is actually taught, we're actually doing training, we're providing resources that they can use. We are providing Closing the Gap Teacher Academies. So we've got reading and math and science academies that we've had this year for our teachers to come. They have received training on different materials to use, and then they left with different materials that they could immediately use back in their classrooms. We have weekly content common planning, and so that common planning, again, every week, and so the campuses make sure that that is happening, and the discussions and there's training that happens there as well, is specifically targeted to the needs of students. We also have, as you know, the 5 teacher work days that you approved as part of our calendar. And those days are, again, for our teachers to plan and prepare to support our kids. We have teacher share sessions, so there's share sessions for each of the different content areas. Again, those are ongoing, and that's additional instruction for our teachers. We also have a model school teachers program, and so we have teachers that have applied to be model teachers. And so that means that they are the master teachers, and they apply for these to be a master teacher, a model teacher. There's evaluations that happen for them. The principals recommend them, and we have them in all different areas of the district, all different content areas, and all different grade levels. So a principal can say, we have a teacher who's needing some support, and we'd like for her to go see a model teacher for 5th grade. We can actually share with the principal, okay, here's a model teacher or list of model teachers for your cluster group. So like schools, like type students, and they can go and again receive more training and assistance there. And then of course we have different planning sessions. We also have very targeted training for our bilingual and our ESL teachers. This keeps changing. Our EB, emergent bilingual, is what they're now called. So we have specific training for our teachers on working with students who are learning a second language. So moving forward, we again would like to recommend that we leave the targets as they currently are. We know that they're higher. We didn't adjust them based on the pandemic. As I shared, our goal was that we work to get back to where we were, and we continue moving forward. We will continue to revisit the targets and certainly look at the STAR results for this year to see if we need to make any revisions, and we will continue providing intensive professional development to our teachers based on the needs of our students. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Let me start to the left. Lucas?
Thank you, as usual. Wonderful job on your presentation. Very thoughtful and concise. So do we have data? I'm looking at the chart, and I'm trying to interpret it against the 2018-2019 data. And am I missing something? I'm not seeing a data point that helps me understand the comparison.
So we don't have data compared to STAR results as we've presented them previously to the board. We also don't have data to compare to the state or to other districts because every district sets their own targets. So we can look at our STAR results. These are based on our STAR results.
For 2021.
Yes,
but
2021.
The goal was we're going to get back to 2019.
Yes.
So I'm looking for the 2019 number.
So the 2019 number, that's in the very first column. So the 2021 target is the 2019 number.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That helps me, and I was not sure how to interpret that number.
Okay, I apologize if I didn't answer that correctly
Okay.
initially.
All right. I may have other questions.
I mean, obviously, these are disappointing. I know you were disappointed as well. I am not surprised that the reading numbers are higher than math because we've seen that across the state. That's actually something that's statewide. And I think we've had such a focus on reading, on early literacy, that I think we're starting to see some of the results of that, but obviously still disappointing. Looking at the 3rd grade reading target data and the 3rd grade math target data, the all category and the economically disadvantaged categories are so closely aligned. I feel like if we focus on those economically disadvantaged kiddos, I think we can lift all numbers. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, Ms. Heidemann, wholeheartedly agree with that. That is a focus that we have with our campuses, that economically disadvantaged number, and then also, as you know, we talk to our campuses about incremental growth. We want to see that growth, going up. We want to see that growth. So yes, we too are disappointed with the numbers. We could have gone back and readjusted the numbers and lowered the targets. And as I said, we chose not to do that because we felt that we needed to stick to where we were and continue moving forward.
I have a question about the class of 2020-21 CCMR data. The criteria includes graduation rates and EOC scores. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. The
No.
data for this include, they come from Domain 3 of the
Right.
accountability system.
Okay.
And basically, they're looking to see which students met at least one of what the state considers a CCMR criteria. So for instance, did they meet the TSI, the Texas Success Initiative targets on the TSIA, the SAT, the ACT?
Okay.
Did they take a dual course credit and then earn at least credit for 9 or more hours in any subject or 3 or more hours in reading or math? Did they meet the AP criteria of a 3 or higher on an AP test? Did they earn an associate's degree? So we know we're going to have a lot more kids earning that associate's degree. Did they receive an approved industry-based certification? Did they graduate with a completed IEP or workforce readiness? Did they graduate under an advanced diploma plan and be identified as a current special ed student? Or did they graduate with a level 1 or 2 certificate? So this data is looking at our kids that met one of those benchmarks.
And Ashley, is this a year that the military was not a part of it?
Yes, this was the year that the military
recall
was
that.
Right.
taken out.
I'm just surprised that not one school met the target. If those are the criteria, because we have such high graduation rates, we have so many kids that take AP and dual credit classes.
And the reason is the scores were so high in 18-19. And so when COVID hit and we know we had some losses, they did not remain as high. That's essentially what happened. Because we
Scores
were
on-
very high in 18-19.
Scores on SAT and TSI.
Just
those
on
are
the
across board.
CCMR area in general, with kids earning one of those indicators.
We had students who couldn't take their certification tests
that, yeah.
because the facilities were not available, or the students were not there in class enough to earn the credit or the time that's needed to be able to take the test. So there were a lot of factors that really, they're all COVID factors that have contributed to this. We're hoping that this will be much better next year when we present to you.
I have no doubt it will be. Okay, well, thank you for that clarification, and I know that we're doing a lot in terms of professional development. I think it's important that we also look at what else we can do besides just professional development for teachers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the right, Scott.
So thank you for the presentation. You actually answered my question earlier. I was talking to Dr. Messina earlier, so thank you for that. A quick comment or question, I guess maybe is my understanding next year or maybe the year after we're going to an online STAR test? Is that correct?
Next year.
Next year?
The 22-23 school year, every STAR assessment will be online unless we have a special permission from TEA for a certain student to take a paper test due to very specific needs.
Just a comment, I'm a little concerned about that because that will affect, in my belief, the scores for our kids. And I think that will dramatically adjust these in a negative manner. Just my concern for you and for the district. Secondly, the technology involved in that is going to be immense. The networking involved, the back end. I know our government works so well, but just that involved. Secondly, I know we did a test run as well. How did that go? Can we answer that? Do we know?
So I'll share first of all that we too have some concerns. I think the entire state probably has concerns that every single student is going to have to take the test. electronically, because not every single student obviously learns the same way or has or is able to do that. We have been practicing some with it. We have many of our campuses who chose to take the test on the computer, but we have others that felt that the students weren't quite ready. And you're right, next year we will not have a choice. I think across the state the concern has been how is a bandwidth going to handle all this? Are we going to really be able to handle it? We know that we've had concerns already with some of the online testing. So it's a big question mark, Mr. Henry, as to how that's all going to play out.
And if
And
I
also-
may, oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing to that, if that's okay. Our Cypher Technology Department has done an amazing job working to get us ready for this year's testing that's online and for next year as well. And typically, if we see an issue with online testing, it's something from the
It's on the
testing
state.
vendor, not related to our system in Cypher ISD.
That is correct. Thank you. The issues we've seen have been on the state side, not really on the district side so far.
I have no doubt in our abilities. I think we'll have no issues. It's the other side I always have issues with, because when you have that many kids going at the system at one time, there's always going to be an issue. So, and also understand they're going to change the format of the test as well. We're going to change multiple answers for a test, not these two as well. So all those wrinkles.
A lot of changes with it, yes.
There's going to be some concerns and changes. So those are some red flags to me that we might want to consider for next year, just letting the district and the board know that it's not your fault. So thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie?
First of all, it makes me so happy to be talking about student achievement data. Thank you for this report. I also, and 93 was incredible, and so to not meet a target because you were chasing something that was a really high achievement, I think is maybe the only acceptable reason. Principals like Dr. Martinez and others working really hard out there to make sure our students are college and career ready. I also support the notion of leaving those targets high. I appreciated Lucas's question to the point of what were those scores that we're comparing to, so understanding that column. And so, because to me that is, that is the goal, is restoration and accelerating that restoration as fast as possible. I also have, the timeline was so great way, as always, you show a great visual way to lay out the problem. One thing I would like to do, I found myself writing on the data and putting on the percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged at each campus, and then I found myself translating the percentage into a number of students. I would prefer we look at this data as a number of students, because when 56% is a goal in 2025 at Andre, for example, that still means 44% of the children, which might, let's say there's 1,000 kids, right? That's, or it wouldn't be in that grade level, but that's 440 kids who are not making it. And I think that personalizes and makes it very real for us, the challenge we have ahead, and that we're all can tackle together, because this district is a 93. It's proven it can do that long before we were here, and we're here to help be a part of that positive growth. The professional development, first of all, on Teacher Appreciation Week, I got a warm feeling inside thinking about these model teachers. I just think what an incredible compliment and accomplishment to be in this huge system and to be recognized by that level of excellence and to be willing to share your expertise with other teachers. I think those may be superheroes, need a little cape. And so I think that's great. And also the history of rich professional development. I know it's challenging for teachers at the time and the requirement of professional development, so we hear that input. But I definitely say that this is a strength of the system. One thing I'd really like to see, and maybe even as soon as, in the summer months of our meetings, I'm interested to see the interventions that are in place for students. I know you've started those intervention plans. And really, if we can start to assess the efficacy of those interventions, what exactly did we do for those students who were not on level, and what of those things worked? I'd also like to see the resources aligned to the interventions. So with the percentage of free and reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged students and English language learners, or now we call them EDs, what'd you call them again? BE?
Emergent bilingual.
Thank you, yes. Emergent bilinguals, sorry, forgive me, emergent bilinguals. I would definitely like to see us also look at that data very specifically. I'd also like us to be able to track that for outperformers who are moving those numbers so that we can track their promising practices. And so I feel like this is, this would be very exciting in order to really to understand the decisions that we're making in policy and in budget decisions and how those impact, because I have had a question about even the ESSER dollars and their alignment to the specific needs at a campus and the specific number of students who are economically disadvantaged. So I just feel like that may be a way that we leave those targets high and we can hit those targets and also make sure we're making decisions, the best decisions about where to spend our funds to close the gap and get back to that. No, we're not getting back to 93. We're going for 99% or 100 if it's possible. I think that that is the conclusion of the comments. Thank you all so much.
Dr. Blessing, I'll just share with you that you mentioned the ESSER funds. With the ESSER funds, the interventions that the campuses have listed in their plans, any resources that they purchase are tied to the intervention as part of that plan. And then I just want to give a shout out to our campus leadership and our teachers, because they have done an incredible job over these last 2 years with our students and making sure they're providing whatever is needed to help them be successful.
And I'll shout out to Dr. Martinez, who's in the room. I see him doing that every day. And I heard very loud cheers for him at the AP Awards Assembly from its students, so I thought that was very great.
Gilbert.
Another wonderful presentation, Dr. Macias and Ms. Claiborne. I'm not surprised. I'm thankful for the work put in to get us through these past 2 years. It doesn't mean that I'm disappointed or satisfied, by no means. But I do believe in our students. I do believe in our educators. I believe in our admin and our employees. And I believe in our parents and our families and the community here that, like we always do, when we bounce back strong and leading not only in the region but throughout the state. So I have faith in what we're doing here, and I look for those numbers to be going upward in a good trend and stuff once we get everything on board, though. And thank everybody here for their participating. Thank you.
I will add my voice to my colleagues' excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I have a couple of observations and questions. When I presented to leadership TASB, one of the requirements was that you had to present about your district, different qualities, different aspects, and you basically presented to trustees from 18 to 24 different districts. And one of the items that I chose to highlight in the presentation is what we called pyramid of services. And we may have new viewers online who have never heard that term before. But since we're looking at the budget and since we're talking about alignment of resources, or as I like to say, moving resources to where they're needed, would either Ashley, you, or Linda tell us, what do I mean when I say pyramid of services? And maybe we don't even have it anymore, right?
Well, we do have a pyramid of services here in our district. You've heard me talk about our monitor school process. That is part of that pyramid of services. We monitor where our campuses are at and which campuses need the greatest support. And so we provide that support based on their needs. So if that's what you're talking about, where we're making sure that we're providing more support to students or to campuses that are performing at the lower levels.
So we do in fact allocate more resources to those campuses that demonstrate a need for more resources.
Absolutely. They get more resources, they have more staff, they have more training and staff development. Dr. Goree, where are you, Dr. Goree? Dr. Goree over there is a one that she's our assistant superintendent for school thank you, and transformation. I just went blank. Transformation, and so works very closely with a group of campuses that they're not necessarily failing. They're not failing, mm-hmm. but they're not at the level that we expect here in Cy-Fair, and they're very open to the support. So they get quite a bit more support.
Thank you for clarifying and providing a little more detail to that concept. We can always look at a glass of water as being half full or half empty. From my perspective, I'm going to ask a question that I asked both last October and last November in the context of what you presented today. These goals have relatively low percentages in terms of achievement. Are they low in context compared to the state of Texas or ESC number 4? Granted, I already know the answer, but I always love to ask the same question twice. You may get different answers.
I'd be happy to answer that. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, each district is setting their own targets. So the state gave each district's Board of Trustees the ability to approve the targets that are appropriate for that district. So we can't really compare ourselves with these targets to the state or to Region 4. However, we do know that when we look at just our overall general STAR target, our STAR data, we definitely outperform the state in student performance at the meets level overall in every single content area.
And when I asked this question last November, I asked you to go back and take a look and see, did the delta change? We've always outperformed. And so when I asked you, did the outperformance increase, decrease, or remain the same, what was your answer?
You have given me a chance to redeem myself because I have that right here. And the answer is that we continue to outperform the state. So clearly our percentages are higher. Even though we fell down a little bit, we were still higher than the state in performance in every area.
And we, in fact, increased the delta.
Yes, sir.
We increased the degree of outperformance.
That is correct.
For myself, and I know Commissioner Williams and our current Commissioner Morath have always encouraged us to make certain that we understand the context when we look at data and evaluation. On college, career, and military readiness pre-COVID, what was the level that we were assessed by the state of Texas? Did we have a B or a C or a D?
We actually had an overall rating of a 92, so we were an A, and that goes back to what I said, that those scores were really high before COVID, so we were an A in CCMR.
I would like to re-ask a question that's already been asked, but I think the answer is important. We are a leader in the state of Texas with having a robust JROTC program. And I believe a JROTC program is a critical piece of the puzzle. And many of our students do choose a career in the military. How is that choice of theirs evaluated now under CCMR?
So under CCMR, the state has removed the military readiness indicator for now because they are unable to get information on which of students in the state of Texas actually enlisted in the military due to safety concerns. So because we are not able to obtain that data from the federal government, we are unable to have a CCMR indicator. And we've also asked the state if we could use students enrolled in JROTC as a CCMR indicator, and at this time they have said no.
Well, that's unfortunate because that's always been one of our strengths, but even though we will not receive credit for it, I still believe firmly in that program as being valuable in enhancing student attainment, not only for the cadets, but for the students that they happen to influence by their behavior. Lucas asked a very important question as to the beginning numbers. Where did they come from? I share the concern of Scott when he talked about our moving forth into testing on a computer. I know for myself personally, I did much better on a paper test where I could skip problems, then go back, solve them, and go back to them. And I know that professional exams now have major portions, if not all of them, are on the computer, and many students, very capable students, of all professions have difficulty with that approach, and it's not particularly real world. So I share that concern, plus the changing of the test questions. Commissioner Morath has already indicated that the plans are to make the STAR test more strenuous, which makes achieving targets going to be more difficult, which is the reason why I always go back and say we have to look at it in context, because law of large numbers says we can compare ourselves to the state of Texas or ESC number 4, and they can change the test all they want to, but that's the comparison that's meaningful. But you are correct. The law requires us to make an internal comparison only, and I appreciate your making that point, because it will, in fact, at least in my opinion, invalidate some of those results going forth, and we have to be careful that as trustees, we understand what the data is telling us, which is always a challenge. The TEA website noted that it is a requirement to have targeted professional development. Certainly, you identified different categories of professional development. Linda, how do we know that this is going to be targeted to the needs of those teachers in that particular campus?
So as I shared, I'm trying to look around, Karen. As I shared, Mr. Jackson, we always look at the data. So we're looking at the data from every single campus. So we do general staff development, and then we do specific staff development based on the needs that we're seeing in the district, but at the campus as well. And then we really drill down at the campus level as they're having their specific training, as they're having their planning sessions, as I mentioned, as they're using the model teachers to provide specific support. You know, they might say, I need to send this teacher to go see a reading workshop lesson. Who's the model teacher I can send them to? So they can really drill very specific and have that staff development right at their fingertips.
When you brought out the program concept of a model teacher, at that time we did not have a stipend allocated for model teachers. Have we added that into the budget?
We have never had a stipend for our model teachers. That hasn't been something that we've done. So no, it's not in the budget, and we've never had a stipend.
Sadly, I was thinking that was going to be the answer. We have targets here of 2% and 3%. And this is always a standard question of mine. Why do we think that 2% and 3% targets, given that we're coming out of COVID and we have kept the targets in place from pre-COVID? Explain to me why this is a reasonable assumption again, and how will we be able to properly evaluate this come next year? In context, Commissioner Morath has told us it will take 4 years for us to get back to whole. We've grilled you, Linda, as well as Mark, and your goal is to get us back to whole in 2 years. Well, the answers from the commissioner, and I've worked with him when he was a trustee just like us, I think he's on top of the numbers, and I know you and Mark are. So aren't we setting ourselves up for disappointment on setting these targets? Have we set targets that are in fact achievable? I know we don't want to leave the kids behind. But by the same token, as a manager, I've always known we had to have targets that we knew we had a chance to reach. So that's my comment, but also the question is, why do we think these are in fact achievable in such a short period of time?
Well, first of all, Commissioner Morath doesn't know our teachers and our leaders that we have in this district. They are exceptional. They are committed to do whatever they need to do to make sure that our kids are being successful. Our campuses have high expectations for all kids and for their teachers. And I can assure you that as we're disappointed with the results, they too are very disappointed with the results, and they're going to make sure that our kids continue to achieve. We believe that we may not reach the targets next year, Mr. Jackson, because as Mr. Hendry has shared and others, there's a lot of changing variables that are coming our way with the redesign of the test, everything on with technology. But we believe that we need to work towards getting our kids back to where they were, and we need to accelerate the instruction. We have plans for accelerated instruction for our students, and think about what 4 years means. That's a whole graduating class, 4 years. So we are very committed to accelerate the instruction. We've worked with our curriculum, we've worked with our teachers and our teams to provide opportunities to provide that acceleration and move our kids faster than those 4 years that are predicted.
And just to add to that, the short answer is, it's better to set goals high and not achieve than set them too low. So we want to have high goals, and we know that it might take a year or two, but we want to get back, not to where we were, but exceed where we were. So that's our goal.
I think the challenge then is both for campus leadership, but also senior management, to be able to manage these expectations without pushing undue pressure into the classroom. We have done it in the past, and I expect that we will do it again. But I do want our classroom teachers to know that we are aware of the challenges that we're looking at, and I know that we can trust leadership at both levels to make certain that the pressure does not become an impediment to our achieving our goals and our targets. I do have a question for you, Teresa. It's always a great recommendation that if we have plans and goals that are influenceable by senior management and the superintendent in particular, that the superintendent's evaluation be aligned and somewhat indistinguishable from board outcome goals and progress measures. So the question I have for you is this, what we've identified here tonight, is that part of the board monitoring package that by consensus we approved in January, February of this year?
That's actually mine, Mr. Jackson, because I'm the one that provides that information, and that this has not been part of the board of the evaluation because we hadn't had an opportunity to do any comparisons. This is actually the first year that we do a comparison of what the target was and if we achieved the target. But we will certainly work to include it in the next year.
Very good. Thank you for addressing that, and I support moving this into that direction so that we were all aligned, moving in the direction that we want to move into. That concludes my comments and questions. However, Lucas, you had a follow-up question.
Yeah, and after hearing the rest of the board, I'm going to convert that to a comment and an encouragement for all of our teachers, parents, and families that are listening. And so just briefly, when my daughter started this year, her ability to write dictation was not where it needed to be because my wife and I just never occurred to us to read a sentence aloud and let her write it down. But we worked on it, and now she's doing great. My encouragement is that I know that we have to be creative, and what I saw in the presentation was teacher development plans. And I know that all of our principals are thinking about ways to engage the community, ways to engage the parents, and get the parents involved in the outcome and the good outcomes of their kiddos. So I wanted to comment, I know that this board is very supportive of the creative ways in which our principals will reach out to those families, get those families involved. And I know that we don't have data here, but I did want to add the point that part of the plan I already know does include the parents, and I look forward to finding and seeing next year all the creative ways that our parents are being engaged by our principals. So No further comments.
Julie, anything further? And to my right, Scott? Natalie?
I did have two excellent points about that undue pressure in the classroom and giving teachers the flexibility they need to do the good work. I did have a question raised to me by high school math teachers. Actually, they didn't raise it, it was just conversation, this idea about the closing the gaps time. And I think we came down, it was a pandemic, we had to respond, and the federal government and the state, I think, completely overstepped to put such specific requirements on how ESSER funds could be spent, telling us exactly the size of the group and who could teach it. However, I wondered about the ability to give back to teachers some flexibility. For example, saying all that needs to happen in every math class on a Tuesday, then it's language arts on a Wednesday. I feel like that's not a natural teaching cycle. If there's a concept that takes a few more days to teach or less days to teach, I think it may be an interruption to teachers' ability to test, like give tests to the students, towards their mastery of the content and the grading cycle. And so I just wonder if that might be a way where we keep the expectations. I definitely respect our superintendent and Dr. Macias's desire to set those high and rigorous goals, and for Tom to come back and then remind us that that's also part of the superintendent evaluation. I think that's keeping all these data whole and in one place, but I definitely wonder about the places where we could give back to teachers some flexibility now that we've played with that, because we've had a structure, and now let them see what they could do to iterate it.
And Dr. Blasky, remember that the closing the gap time is outside of the instructional time, so it's out of the class period time. It's additional time. It's not, so as far as whatever they plan for their class period, they should be able to do that, because that time is built in to be additional time than the class period.
And there's one for every period of the day?
There is, campuses do it a little bit differently. As you said, some of them will do, at the high schools where it's a little bit different, some of them will do Mondays is English, and Tuesdays may be math, versus doing it every single day at a certain period. So there's flexibility at the campus. The leadership takes care of that.
Excellent, thank you.
And just one general comment to that, and we've got several principals in the audience here, and I challenge you after the meeting to ask any of them and any of our other 90 or so principals. I never talk about STAR test. It's just not something I talk about. We talk about providing great first instruction, remediation, and all of the things that go into teaching, but I never talk about STAR test scores. Number one, I think they're way overrated. And I don't want to put the additional pressure. They put enough pressure on themselves, so they're not getting a lot of pressure from me. Now, Dr. Macias may be, but it's not coming from me.
I can assure you that, I'm going to echo what Dr. Andrews said, they put pressure on themselves. All of our leaders are top-notch leaders, and they're going to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. I really appreciate them.
And to that point, I appreciate that your purity. And I would even say I was able to participate at the Legislative Advisory Council for TASB, and this issue of local accountability and shifting the accountability system is something that's highly prioritized at every region in the state at this point, and I definitely would support movements to make sure that we are looking at at shifting the accountability to more locally driven measures.
Gilbert? Very good. Let's move on. The board will now review the following consensus action items. 8A, the board will consider approving the minutes of the April 11th, 2022 regular board meeting. And 8B, the board will consider approving the minutes of the April 26th, 2022 special called board meeting. I presume we can leave this on the consent agenda. We can. The board will now review the following non-consensus action items. 9A, the board will consider nominations for the large district member position on the TASB Board of Directors for Region 4, Position F. We already have been through this process. There will be a vote on Monday, but are there any questions, comments, observations anybody cares to make? I'll look to the right this time. Scott? Natalie, Gilbert, and to my left, Lucas, Julie. That will not be, obviously, since we have to vote on it, it will stay on the non-consent agenda. 9B, the board will consider approving the budget amendments for the period of January 1, 2022 through March 31, 2022. Questions only tonight. To my left, Lucas? Julie?
Yes, I do have a question. I went through, there was a lot of information. Thank you, Karen, for this detailed information. We're coming to the end of the budget year, so we're starting to wrap things up. I had a question regarding our initial budget when we passed it. We still see that the majority of our budget goes to instruction, right? 707 million. We initially had a deficit of 88 million. That has been closed to 71. That's correct?
That's correct.
And between now and when we finalize and close this budget year, do you anticipate that that deficit will decline additionally?
Yes, we anticipate that it will decline further. Probably, I mean, as of now, we think it'll go down about another 10 to 12 million, maybe a little bit more than that, give or take. And then we'll offset that deficit with the ESSER funds.
Okay.
And allocate. That was, I don't know if you recall at the last board meeting that I indicated that the ESSER 2 funds, which was the second amount given to the district, that we felt like we probably utilized the majority of that to help offset the deficit.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I had additional questions, but regarding food service, but Mr. Crawford answered my questions.
Oh, great.
So, yes, thank you.
Okay.
And to my right, Scott? Natalie? Gilbert? May we move this to the consent agenda? So Holly, if you would, please. 9C, the board will consider approving the instructional materials allotment and TEKS certification for 2022-2023. Questions only this evening. Going to my right, Scott? Natalie? Gilbert? To my left, Lucas? Julie? Hearing no questions, may we move this to the consent agenda? Holly, if you would, thank you. 9D, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. Pardon me 1 second. 9D1, EHBC Local Special Programs Compensatory Accelerated Services, revised. 9D2, EIE Local Academic Achievement, Retention, and Promotion, revised. 9D3, FL Local Student Records, revised. That's all of 9D. Questions to the left? Lucas, Julie? To the right, Scott, Natalie, Gilbert? May we move this to consent agenda? Holly, thank you. 9E, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 9E1, CFD Local Accounting, Activity Funds Management, revised. 9E2, CQB Local Technology Resources, Cybersecurity, revised. 9E3, FDE Local Admissions, School Safety, Transfers, revised. Lucas, questions? Julie? No. Scott? Natalie? Gilbert? I do. You know I can't go any longer than that without asking a question. You knew it was going to happen. So on 9E2, we are required to have a cybersecurity chief. Do we have one? A cybersecurity.
Yes.
And when did we appoint one?
Gosh, it was.
Yesterday?
No, it was it 2019? Yeah, 2019.
So we actually appointed an individual long before we were required to do so.
Yes, and the policy just has slightly changed in the language, and it's really more related to the fact of who can report breaches is one of the main things that they indicated here. Used to be it was just the cybersecurity coordinator. Now anybody can report a breach.
And when we talked about this in 2019, and I have a couple of technology experts on the board, if you would, please talk a little bit about security breaches, because school systems, and in fact, a very large one in the greater San Antonio area, not only was it breached, they were held for ransom. So talk about what type of, what are we required to do in this case?
I'm going to let Paula Ross come up here because she can do it more eloquently than I can.
Breaches, phishing, ransomware, malware, antivirus. There's a variety of ways that we could be breached. Data on the web submitted. So,
And would you briefly identify what security measures we have in place to address the
yes,
potential
sir.
breach attacks?
We have a security defense in depth approach, and we start with our endpoints where we have antivirus, we have firewall in place for internets, we have data backups, we have air gap backups. We have a variety of measures in place depending on the different points on the network.
As part of this policy, are trustees required to take a cybersecurity course? And is your department charged with ensuring that trustees take this course?
In 2019, it was every employee and every board member and contractor. I'm going to turn to Marnie. Do our board members they're not required any longer, but as a cybersecurity coordinator, we are encouraging that every board member and employee continue. We're offering the training, and we are monitoring the training.
Thank you. I think it's excellent training, whether we're required to take it any longer or not. I think it's very important. Thank you. May we move 9E, 1, 2, and 3?
Mr. President Jackson,
Yes, sir.
if I could, just a couple
Yes, sir.
comments. So regarding security, then Mr. Henry, jump in whenever you want. Have you had an audit, pen testing? What types of audits do you run? What's the frequency of those audits?
We have had a variety of internal and external pen tests, and we typically take those results and triage through the results of that and implement procedures that according to their recommendations. I don't recall any of the specifics right now, but I can get you some of that information. We've done one last year and then another one this year.
Okay. And what considerations do we have? It's a very complicated problem because we have, some 100,000 plus kiddos running around with our computers on our network. What could go wrong? And they're creative little guys and gals.
Are you talking the Chromebook specifically?
Yes, ma'am.
Most of the Chromebooks are updated on a regular basis via Google and Google Admin, and we have they're pretty tight devices. It's not as open as a Windows device, so they're not as susceptible to a lot of the vulnerabilities.
Got it. And I know that we have our own data centers, and we're speaking about security, but in my world, security also means availability of data.
Correct.
So what do we do in terms of failover plans and the ability to do a recovery, disaster recovery?
Disaster recovery, we are working through setting up, and at different points, we work through, for example, we have a failover. I'll give you an example with our wireless. When we originally designed our wireless, most of our BYOT data went through one data center, and a lot of our, and that was just, we had to work within tight parameters when we installed that. Recently, we have redesigned that, and we've balanced our wireless data between the two data centers, and we have actually practiced a disconnect of one data center to verify that our wireless would transfer over to the other data center. There are measures like that in place.
And I'm sure that went swimmingly. Nothing went wrong at all, right?
It went pretty well, actually. I won't say that it was perfect, but it did go
Very
fairly
good.
well.
Okay. Nothing?
You did great, Lucas. Thank you.
Okay.
So may we move this to the consent agenda then?
Yes.
Yes.
Holly, thank you. 9F, the board will consider approving the memorandum of understanding between Sam Houston State University and Cypress-Fairbanks ISD to provide a Master of Education degree program with a focus on school counseling. To my right, Scott, Natalie, Gilbert, Lucas, Julie. May we move 9F to the consent agenda? Holly. 9G, the board will consider approving the First Amendment to the 2021-2022 interlocal agreements with Harris County Resources for Children and Adults. Lucas? Julie? Scott? Natalie? Gilbert? I do have one question, Roy. This has to be approved by the trustees, but since we're talking about the county, how did the commissioners vote on this, or have they voted?
They have not. That's part of the process to where you get the opportunity to approve that, and then we work with Harris County on that. We've got paperwork that'll be signed after Monday night, assuming that you approve that, and then Dr. Henry signs that, and then it's sent to the county.
Now, this says it's a First Amendment. Was it approved by the commissioners in its original form prior to the amendment?
Yes. If you think back, I believe it was June of 2021 where you approved 18 youth service specialists, and that was approved, and this is simply making an amendment to that. So if we choose to use ESSER funds for those positions or part of those positions, we can do so.
And do you recall if that was a unanimous approval by county commissioners at that time?
I can't say that I know that if that was unanimous or not. Perhaps, I don't know. Do you know that, Marnie or Harry?
I don't know that, but this is a program in general that's supported by both sides of the aisle.
We have been in
So it's my
partnership with them.
so it's my recollection that it was in fact unanimous.
That's good to know. But yes, we have been in partnership for several years with them, specifically with the youth service specialists.
Very good. May we move this to the consent agenda? Holly. 9H, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. Gilbert, you'll be up because Mr. Bill Powell is one of our presenters. 9H1, athletic all activities, student accident insurance renewal. 9H2, audio meters for health services. 9H3, portable building deck, ramp, and walkway installations. 9H4, property insurance renewal. That's all of 9H. Questions? Lucas? Julie, to the right. Scott? Natalie? Gilbert?
No, it's okay, Bill. Rolling along.
So I do have a question. Property insurance renewal. Please give us a brief overview. This is a large contract. It did increase. So can we have a little bit of the background on this, please?
Absolutely, and actually, I'd like to ask Amanda Bolts to come up and respond to the question.
Hello, good evening. Yes, this is a large increase. We were expecting about 25% increase, but it ended up being about 19.35% increase. So the premium's $5,961,010. So our broker McGriff, they actually go out and they try and get us the best bid possible, and so they engage with over 50 insurance carriers and pools to provide competitive responses. And so we actually have 16 different carriers in order to get this low of a premium. Did that answer your question?
So why did it go up by somewhere between 18 and 25%?
Just the number of claims across the U.S. Actually, 2021 was the second most annual records in history. So 2020, we had the most of $22 billion weather and climate disaster And so in 2021, there was just 2 less. So there was $20 billion weather and climate disasters.
Any significant ones, you mentioned the United States, anything significant hitting the school district?
In 2021, we had Winter Storm Uri.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Thank you. For the viewing audience, the answers that you just heard were all known to the trustees and material provided to us. But when you see an increase of this size, I think it's important that we provide that answer to everybody who cares to know about it. So thank you for going over that, and my colleagues, thank you for your forbearance in my asking a question that you all already knew the answer to. So may we move 9H to consent agenda? Holly? 9I. The board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts paid from bond funds and M&O funds to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designate to execute all necessary documents related to such contracts as follows. 9I1, 2021 Ben Bradley Police Building Renovation and Addition. 9I2, 2022 CFFCU and Pigeon Stadium's LED displays. Questions to my right, Scott? Natalie, Gilbert, to the left.
I've got one.
Lucas.
So, Roy, I've got a question on how we went about the process for selecting the contractor for the renovations.
We utilized a competitive seal proposal process, and I'll let Mr. Morgan answer further. His team did the evaluation.
Thank you, Roy. Thought you had it. I was going to go sit back down. No, we do use the competitive seal proposal method, and we open the proposals at a given time. And then we have an evaluation committee that evaluates each of the general contractors. Our A&E team, architect and engineer team, also evaluates the general contractors, and we get references from other districts.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of the criteria that you would use to make a decision?
So we have a 120-point scale. We use price, which is 40 points, which is about 33% of the evaluation. Reputation of the offerer, the quality of similar scope projects that they've done. We use the completion rate for similar scope projects that they've done. We use the response to warranty, the closeout record, how quickly they can close out a project, their project team, and their subcontractors.
I assume that that's a similar criteria that you've used in the past for other contractors?
Yes, we've used that criteria for years.
And what's our success rate in, generally speaking, in hitting on time, on budget through that selection criteria process?
It's very high.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to, when we had a large number like this, I just wanted to understand what our methodology is. And
we're very thorough.
Very good. Okay, thank you. That's
Yes,
all
sir.
my questions.
Okay.
Julie?
Matt, while you're there, I had a question about the CFFCU and Pigeon Stadium's LED displays. Why are we using M&O funds instead of bond funds for that purchase?
So this project is being funded through advertising revenues that have accrued over the years. So it's a good opportunity to reinvest in the stadiums, to enhance the stadium experience, but also provide additional advertising opportunities. Yes, ma'am.
And a minor aside, very quickly, Lucas, thank you for asking that. When I was a first-year trustee, I asked that question. And then the follow-up question that I asked, is that approach that we're using, is that permitted by law?
Yes, sir.
I thought by law we had to accept the lowest bid.
No, sir. We accept the most responsive bidder, and price is a part of that. But we want to make sure that we get a general contractor that we're confident can complete the job, do a quality job at the best price.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Natalie.
And actually, if I could, real quick, Matt, and as someone who is my firm is a consulting firm, and we don't bid on anything school districts, so don't even go there. But I just appreciate the statement that you just made. We're not going for the cheapest, we're going for the best value.
Absolutely.
And that's a very important distinction, and I fully support it.
Thank you.
Natalie.
I have a question about the process before you get the competitive sealed bid. I understand the price, reputation, all those things you rated on.
Mm-hmm.
What are the screenings? Who's able to even give a bid? Are there sizes of the company or other criteria upon which it may not be open to everyone to compete for that?
We don't pre-qualify our contractors, so we advertise the CSP, and anybody can respond. We just open it and evaluate it appropriately.
Is that also true like in architecture and all the other stages
So,
of building?
Architecture is an RFQ. We can only do it based off qualifications. So when we select our architecture firms, we advertise an RFQ, request for qualifications. We bring in firms, we rate those through a committee, and then we bring that recommendation to the board. And we usually do that before or right after we passed a bond. So the group of architects that we've had for the 2014 bond, because the 19 bond kind of overlapped, we continued with those architects.
So basically, architecture firms could have been screened out by size or other qualification and not been able to bid?
Anybody can submit the response to the RFQ. We will evaluate their responses to the RFQ and decide who, if they're qualified, and who we're going to interview.
So there would be a record, we could take a look at those architecture firms who may have wanted to, or responded to the RFQ, but maybe didn't make it through the committee process?
Yes.
And the criteria for that?
That's correct.
Great.
Yes,
I'd be
ma'am.
interested in seeing that information.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
May we move this to the consent agenda? And I will ask this question. There's a difference, and for those of you all who have served on a mud board, and I know I'm not the only one, there's a difference between an RFP and an RFQ. Is it true from a state perspective that for professionals you may only request qualifications, you may not request a bid?
That is correct, Mr. Jackson.
And that includes architects and auditors and...
Surveyors, I think the law lists other professions as
It's,
part of that.
it's professional services and it's enumerated
Very
in
good.
statute.
Thank you. 9I, I don't think I got all the way through. Move to consent. Holly? 9J, the board will consider approving the superintendent's recommendation to give notice to Shikaya Lee that her employment with the district under a term contract is proposed for non-renewal and authorize the president of the board to notify Ms. Lee of the proposed action pursuant to 21.206 of the Texas Educator Code. This item will be discussed in closed session pursuant to Section 551.071 and 551.074 at the end of the meeting this evening. The superintendent's briefing will be presented at the regular board meeting on Monday, May 9th, 2022. Before we move to closed session, I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight or viewing on your television or some other screen at home or wherever you're seeing us. May I have a motion to move?
Mr. Jackson,
Yes, sir.
before you go to closed session, I just wanted to recognize one of our outstanding graduates from, so I'm going to embarrass her a little bit, who's at the University of Florida now, which is Allie Heineman, and Allie's here this evening with her dad. So glad to see her. She's home for summer break.
Welcome to our meeting. Thank you for attending. Now, before we move to closed session, I would like to thank everyone once again. May I have a motion to move into closed session
So
regarding agenda item 9.1, 9.j.
Well, I thought you were done. So moved.
Motion's been made. Do I have a seconded? Motion has been made and seconded. Thank you. We will adjourn to closed session. Mr. Secretary, please note the time as 7:29.
You might let them know